Prosecutor Roth, you had an amazing victory in court today, and what I'd like you to do is, before you tell us what happened when Jalen Kema went to court, give us a real brief background of the Peter Boy Kema case.
I got to be very careful because we still have one case that needs to go to trial, and we really do want to try that case in the court versus trying it in the media on the air. But I think everybody knows about this case. Child Peter Boy went missing back in 1997. The question was, where's Peter Boy?
And he was 6 years old at the time.
He was 6 years old at the time. So I can't go too much into the facts, but that's, I think, a fair statement to say what happened. I think the real victory, it's partial victory. We're still not done with this case. We still have the father's case to go. And again, I don't want to do anything that would jeopardize his right to a fair trial. But one of the things that came out today is that we know at this point where Peter Boy, not necessarily where he physically is, what came out in court, but we know what happened to him.
Can you share that with us, please? Jalen Kema is the one who testified, correct?
Jalen Kema gave some of the facts, and our deputy prosecuting attorney, Ricky Roy Damerville, also gave some of the facts. And, I really don't want to talk about the facts, but there was a record of what happened. Basically, on the record, she failed to protect her son, and for her part of the case is, as a mother, she had a duty to take care of her son, to get him medical attention, and that was not done. There's a lot more facts, of course, that I'd like to talk about. Unfortunately, again, I don't want to try this case in the media. I think we have a good case, and I just want to try that in court.
What did Jalen Kema plead to?
She pled to a lesser charge of manslaughter. One of the things that came out on the record is, as part of that plea agreement, that she will testify against her husband as we go forward.
So Peter Boy Kema is definitely dead. We know that for sure now.
Right. We've actually known that for a while, but today what came out was that he did die. And so there's no question that he was someplace else. We still don't have a body.
Can you share how you got to the point of convincing Jalen Kema that taking the plea deal, that testifying as she has promised to do against her husband, and talking to you about what happened with Peter Boy, that was the right thing to do? How did you make that happen?
Well, again, we get kind of close into facts, but I can say this. When we took over about 4 years ago, actually 4 years ago from next week, one of the things that we start off looking at doing is looking at some of these cold cases with a fresh set of eyes. And we definitely have looked at several of those cases. I think we're into our fifth or sixth cold case. We're still looking at cold cases. We have other cases that we believe we can prove beyond a reasonable doubt. We're getting ready for them. We'll be doing those. Part of that was an amazing team of people that really deserve the congratulations. Part of that is the police department. There's been deputy prosecutors. There's some of the deputy prosecutors that started working on this case are no longer in our office, one of which I can think of is Cynthia Tai, who did a great job in running down facts. One of our investigators that came back was a guy named Billy Pereira, who's still helping us interview people and doing a lot of work. Detective Derek Morimoto from the Hawaii County Police Department has done an amazing job. Our victim witness peoples, of course, Ricky Roy Damerville, one of our deputy prosecutors, Deputy Prosecutor Haheo Kahala, also spent a lot of time working on these cases. And I guess a big part is Peter Kema Sr. and Jalen Kema. They were indicted about April 28th. And having them apart really, I think, played a role in what happened today as well.
You mentioned that Jalen failed to protect her son. Taking a plea deal implies there's punishment involved. What punishment is Jalen Kema likely to suffer? Can you tell us about that?
Well, as part of the plea agreement, she's still spending time in jail. She'll spend time in jail probably until April 27th of 2017. Hopefully by that time she'll have testified or will have done a deposition, which is also part of the agreement. Then she'll be put on probation. There was facts that were brought up in court about her life, and I got to, again, be very careful about facts here because I don't want to put out facts that could prejudice her husband, who still hasn't gone to trial. But there was things that she could have done to prevent this. And one of the big things that she could have done personally is take her son for medical attention. One of the facts that was brought out on the record was an infection or affected arm that any parent would have known to have done something, and she just didn't take that opportunity to do it.
Of course, my recollection is, and looking back at a timeline of the case, is that Peter Boyd Jr. was taken in for medical attention, and there was evidence of broken bones and previous injuries. So
that was previous. That's correct. When he was, I believe, 1 year old.
What are you charging Peter Sr. with?
He's charged with murder.
And what is it that Jaylyn pleaded guilty to?
She pleaded guilty to manslaughter, which has a potential of 20 years incarceration. She also had a welfare fraud theft second case, which has a possibility of another 5 years.
Could you tell us the difference between manslaughter and murder?
The sentence for murder is life with or without the possibility of parole. Manslaughter, the penalty is up to 20 years incarceration. In Hawaii, for murder, it is intentionally or knowingly taking the life of another person. Manslaughter is knowingly or recklessly taking the life of another person.
How is that different?
It's a matter of intent. Under murder, you're causing the death, intentionally or knowingly causing the death, and manslaughter is knowingly or recklessly.
What happens next? What's the next step for Hawaii County prosecutor relative to, I believe, Peter Kema Sr.?
Well, he has a hearing coming up next month. We're expecting that trial to start probably in April. We'll see, what happens there. For Jaylyn, her sentencing has been pushed back until May of 2017.
Well, I was just going to ask you, what assurance do you have that Jaylyn will follow through on her agreement to actually testify? But my guess is having the sentencing after that might be an influence.
That hopefully will have a big influence. And, if she doesn't follow through with her agreements or she violates any other law, she could potentially go to jail for 25 years, consecutive sentences.
What role did Peter Boyd's siblings play up to this point? Because I know as they got older, they began to be more forthcoming with their memories. Or what role do you expect them to play going forward, if you can share that?
Well, I can just say this, that I've had a chance to meet his siblings, and they are remarkable people, and they've done a lot for us. One, they put a human face, and everybody knows about this case, but when you talk to these people and get into their shoes and you listen to them, it just makes it so much more real, and they're really good people. It's amazing to see how kids grew up in a certain way turned out to be such, not just decent, just good people.
It has to be heart-wrenching for them and also even to talk with them.
It is, but, I was talking to Ricky Roy Damerville, and any murder case for a deputy prosecutor, for a victim witness counselor, investigator, these things, it's not just looking at them for a couple of minutes or a couple of hours, a couple of days, a couple of weeks. These cases live with you for years and possibly for the rest of your life. And that's not just this case. It's any murder case. People watch TV and everything's over within an hour. For us, we live with these cases. I tell everybody that walks through my door, whether they're coming in for a prosecutor position, a clerical position, whatever position they're coming through, is that my goal is to treat people the way you'd want your family members treated. And that means that you take the victims as if they're your family members. How would you want your family members to be treated? That means that, of course, the people inside the office, you want to treat them well. That also means, though, for the defendant, you treat them like you'd want your family members to be treated. And that doesn't mean they get a special deal. It means that you treat them honestly, you treat them fairly, because if any of us have a family member that's being prosecuted, we want to make sure that they're being treated as fairly as possible. And so that's important. But going back to the victim's family, when you sit down with them and you hear their stories, it's hard not to get emotional. As prosecutors, we have to put on this facade of being solid, but there's times when you just gotta say, wow, this is real life, and this is not a movie. And whether it's this case or any other case, you realize the human factor is tremendous.
Well, everything I've read about what the siblings have said is just the memory of the abuse, the constancy of the abuse, and then it's been stated that one of the children actually saw Peter Boyd dead. I can't imagine living with that kind of memory.
Yeah, I can't comment on that, but I'll just give a generic comment. We have facts like that in almost every murder case, and we have some of our cold cases that are still sitting out there that, for me, my thought is, how would I feel as one of these family members? And that's why it's so important for us to look at these cases, because the family members, they don't forget. Friends, they don't forget. We in law enforcement, we can never forget, and we have to keep on trying to do our best to make sure that these families have closure and that there's justice brought to the community for what's happened here. You know, one of the things that people don't realize is that as prosecutors, we have an ethical duty not to bring cases unless we believe we can prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. That doesn't just mean we think it's happened. We have to believe that we can prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. And all these cases that we've been looking at, I have that belief that we can prove it. We have that belief that we can prove it. I think one of the big factors has just been having other people look with fresh sets of eyes. This case sat with a deputy for a while.
Meaning before you came along?
Before I was prosecutor. It was sitting with a deputy prosecutor for many years. I don't think I deserve any credit. What I was able to do, though, is I was able to get other people, like our investigator, Billy Pereira, and talk with Detective Derek Morimoto, and have them look at other things. And once we started looking and actually talking to people, it made a difference. All of our cold cases, what I'm finding is the more you talk to the witnesses, the more you dig, the more you uncover. And the lesson that I've learned is don't just rely on what's written. You have to go out and you have to talk to people and refresh their recollections. Not to say that the police weren't doing the best job that they could, but sometimes as you go through a report, if I'm talking to you today and I talk to 5 other people, there's other questions that I should be going back and I should be asking. From a prosecutor standpoint, again, we're looking at how are we going to prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt, not how do we just get probable cause. And I think that's really made a big difference in all these cold cases that we've been working on, is just going out and doing the work. And we've really been blessed to have some really great people to work with. And we had some help. The mayor actually allowed us to have a little bit of extra money to bring in a person. And the county council, they allowed us to bring in a cold case investigator just to work on these kinds of cases. And it's been paying off in multiples. And so we've been very, very blessed over this last 4 years to just have amazing people who have come out of the woodwork to help us.
So in this case and in cases like this, do you essentially just start from scratch, pretend like you don't know that much about it, meaning your prosecutors? Do you just start at the beginning and go through it? For these cases, me personally, because I've actually worked on a couple of these cases, I literally start from scratch. What I've found is you got to go read it yourself, and you have to bring in people and talk to them yourself. And, you have your investigators go out and talk to people. Then, depending on what they have, we're bringing them in and talk to them. And it's amazing how much you learn from all these people. We're working on another case right now, another cold case. And I brought in a new deputy, and he says, "Wow, that's amazing. Every person that we've come in, we've made our case better." I said, "Yeah, that's you just got to do a little bit of work and have a lot of faith." And so we've been blessed to have a lot of faith, and we've done a lot of work, and we've had great people to have done that. And I'm just, for me, I'm just so proud of the people that I work with, because it's them that really deserves to get all the credit, not me. Well, this is a case that has been hanging out there for 19 years, and I know some of your prosecutors have been there for 19 years, so they have to feel somewhat gratified. But I need to ask you about a sort of sticky part about this case. Mm-hmm. It appears from everything I have read and understood that there was significant child abuse as documented by the Department of Human Services. And in fact, a few years ago, the head of the Department of Human Services even released more than 2,000 pages of documentation of this kind of thing. And I know this particular case at this time is not about anything other than what happened to Peter Boy, but can you comment on the larger implications of Department of Human Services appearing to have perhaps completely dropped the ball and allowed this abuse to continue? Because it feels kind of outrageous to me.
I'll tell you what, I don't think it's appropriate for me to comment at this time, but when we're done with the second part of this, I'll be happy to give you a whole bunch more what went on behind the scenes and what some of the other facts and some of these questions, because they really need to be talked about. I have a belief in, I say this to people on a regular basis, with every adversity, there's always an equal or greater opportunity. And this case is a great learning opportunity. And we really need to study what happened here to make sure this doesn't happen again and should never happen again. I'll leave it at that.
What else can you tell us, or would you like to tell us about the Peter Boy Kema case?
Well, we still have one more to go, and like I said, we want to try that in the court rather than in the media. I just want to, again, tell you how proud I am to work with the people that I work with and how proud the county should be. And I'm not just talking about people from the prosecutor's office, because there's so much more than just the prosecutor's office that made this happen. Our police department, there's so many people out there that deserve a lot of credit, and we do have good things happening here. With all the negative stuff that we keep on seeing in the media, that's happening around the United States, around the world, this is still the best place to live, I think, anywhere.
Thank you, County Prosecutor Mitch Roth.
Thank you, Sherry.
Aloha.
Aloha.